My name is Bill Manning. I am looking forward to talking with you, not talking at you, about using the ergometer to help develop better rowing technique. I'm also hoping that what we can do with this time together is expand upon what was being discussed in the panel this morning on the rowing stroke, so that ideally we leave here with a better understanding, better fundamental understanding of some of the rowing concepts that constitute good rowing technique, and also with some tools to help impart those skills, that ability into the athletes that we're working with. So the idea behind this is that very often there's a dichotomy, what I think of as a false dichotomy between rowing on the river and trying to teach rowing when you're on the river, and then when you're off the water, just thinking about training, just thinking about conditioning. And I do believe that you can make some real gains off the water in terms of helping people learn to row better while you're helping them develop their fitness and develop their strength. I also feel like pretty much everybody's got access to an ergometer. Not everybody has access to tanks. Not everybody has access to good fancy video equipment or some of the other tools that are used to help develop better rowing skills, but everybody's got access to an erg. So with that in mind, what can we use the erg for? Why do we use the erg? And I'm not going to insult your intelligence and read for you what you have in front of you, but ideally, sort of the three big things that the erg allows you to do is, one is to individualize. Most of us, when we're out coaching, we're coaching more than a single sculler. And we're always faced with that dilemma of, at what level am I coaching to with this boat? Some people get it already. Some people are never going to get it, perhaps. You're coaching to the middle. You're going to bore the ones that are farther advanced. You're going to perhaps leave behind those that aren't quite up to speed and aren't going to get up to speed. So you've always got that challenge. On the ergometer, obviously, it's what I like to call the land single. It's boom. It's one-on-one. Another big element for me is that it's non-threatening. As an athlete, when you're in the boat, almost regardless of your skill level, you're always worried about something. If you're new to the sport, you're worried about staying dry. If you're very, 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 very advanced in the sport, you're still worried because this coach is also the selector. And so you're worried about making a mistake. You're worried about doing something that's going to hinder your chances of advancing in the program. So again, the erg becomes a safer environment for people. And then thirdly, in most serious rowing nowadays, people are putting in a lot of mileage on the erg. Right? Or as we do, a lot of kilometers if you're Canadian. You're putting in a lot of time on the ergometer, and it's habit forming. So you can develop good habits during the wintertime. You can develop good habits when you're off the water. And if you're not developing good habits, you're reinforcing bad habits. Because there's nothing neutral. It's either good, helpful, beneficial, or it's bad, negative, destructive to moving boats well. So those are the three things that I like to, three reasons why I like to use the erg and encourage you to use the erg. And then, from there, it's sort of, what do you want to teach? What are you trying to accomplish? And I think first and foremost, you begin, as you heard the panelists this morning discussing, you begin with balance. You begin with how the person is situated, what their posture is. Are they comfortable? Can you get someone comfortable on the machine? So I'm going to pull up a volunteer, and I'm going to pull up Jeff because I know Jeff, and I'm going to coach with my hands, and Jeff's not going to worry when I put my hands on his shoulder or anything like that. So Jeffrey, come on up. So yes. Now I think irony is the right word. The irony of this is that I had the privilege of coaching Jeff when he was a freshman in college. Right? So clearly my teaching skills were so poor that he had to come back for a second session here 10 years later. Anyway, with this in mind, first thing I like to try to accomplish, first thing you can try to accomplish, I believe, is just getting the person comfortable. If you're not comfortable, you're not going to repeat the action. You're not going to do something uncomfortable. You're not going to do something that makes you uncomfortable when the pressure is on. So getting the person to be comfortable, I think, is fundamental. First thing is simply how they sit on the seat. Okay? Are they centered on the seat? Is their weight balanced? Many of you are on the ergometer right now, and you can play around with this. And I would encourage you, sit up enough right now so that you can actually feel your pelvic bones. You can feel where your pelvic bones are on the seat. Right? When we're in the boat, we've got seats with holes in them. Right? What are those holes for? That's where your pelvic bones are intended to fit. Right? One of the things that's been very interesting, just in the past 10 years or so, those of you that rode the M-Pockers might know, used to be the women had the big wide holes, wider hips, wider pelvis, boom, and the men would row with the small holes. Right? I can't get a guy in our boathouse to row on a seat with the small holes because they're not as comfortable. Right? Not as comfortable. Now, what do the large holes do? They just give you more. In a sense, what it does is it expands the acceptable range of being balanced and where you can sit comfortably. Okay, they don't have to be quite as precise. Right? So the first thing is to just get yourself comfortable, as I said. You want to sit up enough that you can feel. Right? You want to be aware. Now, if you would, go back, and because since all of this is related to posture, go back now and just let yourself slouch. Right? And immediately you notice that you lose that contact. You don't feel your bones. Now what you're feeling, right, all of us, is that muscle. We all have so much muscle there. That's what we're feeling, isn't it? Okay, yes, exactly, okay? So we want to basically try to get up off that muscle and get up into the skeletal system because that's going to put us in a stronger position. Okay? Next point of contact that I like to work with are the feet. Okay? Every good athlete, I think outside of someone who's in a pool, is dependent upon using their feet. They have to be balanced on their feet. They have to be centered. They have to be squared. If you think about a game, basketball game, football game, tennis game, whatever it happens to be, it's all about your ability to change direction. It's all about what you can do. How quickly can you move? Can you move laterally? Can you move forward? Everybody can move forward. That's easy. Okay? Can you move backwards? Can you move to the side? Can you change direction quickly? Okay. All of that comes by having your weight centered over your feet, being balanced. Okay. Same thing in the boat. Same thing in the boat. If you're unbalanced in the boat, you're not going to be able to control the boat. Right. If you're unbalanced in the boat and you're rowing sweep, somebody on the other side has to be equally unbalanced in exactly the same mirror image in order to keep the boat stable. Pretty unlikely. Pretty unlikely. Okay? Although with enough rowing together, it's remarkable how you will see some people adapt. Okay? So the next step is, as I said, to make sure the feet secure on the feet. First thing I would do on the ergometer then, I'm not going to bother asking Jeff to do this right now, but first thing I would do is take the shoes off. Okay? If you look at your shoes, most of us, if you're wearing a pair of running shoes, okay, got a nice thick heel. That heel is designed to prevent you from feeling the impact of your foot on the ground. Okay? That heel on the foot stretches of the erg is going to prevent you from feeling your connection to the foot stretcher. So I would say, do you row without a pair of shoes on, or row with something that's got a thin sole, something that's got a flat sole? Right? I might be the only coach telling the boys to get flats. Right? Right. But indoor soccer shoes, I've seen guys row with Tevas, anything, just anything that's going to allow you to feel. Because eventually we're going to start rowing and we're going to be wanting to change directions. We're going to be wanting to move from one direction to the opposite direction. And if we can't feel that point of contact, it's going to be very difficult to make that change of direction smoothly, to make that change of direction while doing the other things that we need to do. Put the blade in the water. So, balance on the seat, right? Contact on the feet, comfortable, okay? And then the next step are the hands, okay? These are your 3 points of contact. Your seat, your feet, and your hands. Seat, feet, hands. With the hands, okay? I'm not going in order, I'm sorry. With your hands, okay? It's not a sweep oar. That's pretty evident. And it's certainly not two sculling handles either. But there's still a couple commonalities. All right? One, loose, relaxed. Okay? Relaxed. It's always interesting to me to watch, and I don't know, maybe I've seen a little bit more of it this winter, but to see people, see guys after some work kneading out their forearms. And I distinctly remember when I first began rowing how my forearms would just hurt like crazy. Right? Of course, I didn't know at that time that was a bad thing. I thought, well, you know, if it hurts, it must be good because this is supposed to be a macho endeavor. Right? But obviously we know that if you're tight, you're constrained, you're limited. You can't do things when you're tight that you can do when you're relaxed or when you're loose. So you can encourage that looseness, you can encourage that relaxation, you can encourage the idea of using the handle, not trying to over-control the handle. And that will carry over into the water. That'll carry over when you're in the boat. Right? So we'll talk about containing. Containing. The word I really try to avoid using is grip. Grip to me is a very active verb. Okay, if somebody says to me to grip something, I think I have to do something. And this, you know, young people, most people will pick up on the language that we use. Contain, I want you to contain the handle, sounds much more passive, sounds much more relaxed. Right? And that is exactly the behavior we're trying to encourage. So as a little aside, I like to think about the language, think about the power of the language, the word choice, even the emphasis that you put on the words, and the impact that it has on the message being received by the athlete you're working with. So contain as opposed to grip. Okay? An analogy I heard, don't know where I heard it, but I love it dearly. Okay? If I coach 18, 19-year-old boys, you know, I want you to hold the handle as if you're cradling a baby. Okay? Doesn't work. Not at all. Okay? I want you to hold the handle as if you're picking up a small animal. Okay? You had a hamster when you were a kid. You held a baby rabbit at some time. That bird that flew into the living room window and fell down. Okay? You want to hold it so it doesn't get away, but you don't want to crush the life out of it. You don't want to squeeze the life out of it. Okay? So again, that one just happens to, the light goes off for a lot of guys. But you know, keep exploring. Look for different ways. If it's not working with something you're trying, think of another way. Right? If that doesn't work, think of something else. Just keep throwing things out there and pay enough attention to see what gets through. Because something may get through for these people, but it may not over here, and vice versa. So with the hands, loose fingers, visible fingertips. What do I mean by that? Making sure we're over on the front of the handle. If we're going to create pressure on the blade, right, we all talk about pressure on the blade. Really, we want pressure on the pin. Right? How do we get pressure on the pin? Pressure on the blade. How do we get pressure on the blade? Well, when you get into the water, we'll get there. Two, you got to have the pressure on the front of the handle. So if the individual, if they're not on the front of the handle, they're not going to be creating pressure on the face of the blade. Okay? A lot of times I see folks, they sort of have the wrist down and they're behind the handle. And you'll see this most dramatically. You might not notice it so much on the drive, but you'll see it on the recovery because they're pushing the handle forward. That outside, well, the wrist is down. Looks pretty uncomfortable. So I like to tell them, get the hands over so you can see the fingertips. You should be able to see the fingertips coming around the underside of the handle. Now you got to think about the size of the athlete you're working with. Right? That happens to work on a Concept 2 erg handle for the 18, 19-year-old boys that I most commonly work with. It may not work for the 13-year-old girl. I don't know. But if it doesn't, then come up with another way of play. You know, come up with another way of reinforcing the same idea. So, visible fingertips, The point being, get the hand over on the front. Be on the front of the handle. That's where the pressure has to be applied. And most of us, quite frankly, if we're not, I haven't seen a lot of people able to do multiple fingertip pull-ups. Right? They're not very easy to do. Right? And if you get into this position, you're going to find you're going to have to hold on. You're going to have to hold on. You're going to find those fingers having to really work to hold on, as opposed to just hook it over there. Okay? Nice strong hook. One of the things that, as you know, with both in sculling and in sweep rowing, the angle of the hands relative to the handle changes through the drive. Okay? So I'm going to have Jeff right now. I'm going to ask Jeff right now, sort of sit mid-drive. Okay? Mid-drive. Imagine the blade's perpendicular to the boat. Sculling blade, sweep blade, doesn't matter. Blade's perpendicular to the boat. Okay? What's the angle between the handle and your forearms? Perpendicular, yeah. So what do we call that? Straight? 90 degrees? No, I'm going to help it. 90 degrees, all right? I need the 90 degrees in order to take it the next step. All right, yes, yeah, so mid-drive, it's a 90-degree angle. Okay? Anybody's going to get that. All right? We don't have to coach the middle of the drive. Okay? The middle of the drive takes care of itself. Okay? It's the ends, the extremes where things get interesting. Okay? So John, I want you to, for a minute, if you would, I want you to be a port at the catch. Be a port at the catch. As if you were, yep, exactly. Okay? I'm guessing it's going to be a little sharper than that.
Hold the handle or just?
Yeah, with this handle. Okay? All right. So the point being, you come out at the top. Yeah, bingo. Okay? Now all of a sudden, okay, see how tight that is? Okay? He's still trying to hold the right angle. Look at the tension here. Look at this. Right? The tendons, the muscles, all this kind of stuff. See if we can't relax that. How are we going to relax that? By letting the handle rotate in the hand. Letting the handle go from being 90 degrees mid-recovery, mid-drive, to letting it be an acute. That's why I needed the 90, so I could say acute. Okay? Letting it be an acute angle at the top of the slide. If you try to maintain the 90 degrees when you come up to the top, okay, one, you're going to get that tension we saw a moment before, and the second thing is, where's the body going to go? Boom, right over. Right over, because it's impossible to stay balanced and to hold a 90-degree angle, because the oar handle has become the angle of the oar has changed dramatically relative to the angle of the shoulders. Okay, let's come back to the finish. All right, again, I'm going to ask you to be a port. All right, this way folks can see you a little better. All right, and I'd like you to sit at the finish as if you were rowing a port oar. That's starboard. Yeah, okay, yeah. I always, my joke is always, no, that's your Harvard left. I want the real, okay. Yes, okay. So all of a sudden, now, if we had an acute angle here, we have an obtuse angle back here. Okay? And again, it's just a function of being loose enough, being relaxed enough, that the oar handle can change positions in your hand, that you're containing rather than squeezing. If you try to maintain, if you squeeze, if you're holding too tightly, you're going to have trying to maintain that right angle. Okay, and the body is going to come right down this way. Okay? Right down this way. And if you've, I mean, we've never had an athlete leaning out of the boat at the finish, have we? We've seen some of the other crews with that problem. First thing I would look at is look at the hands, because you can bark at him or her all practice long. Don't lean out of the boat. Don't lean out of the boat. But I can tell you right now what's going on in that person's mind, whether they're articulating it to themselves or not. I'm holding on for dear life, because if I let go of this oar handle, I'm going into the drink. So they have to change how they're holding the oar handle, and then they realize that it's not the oar handle that's keeping them in the boat anymore. It's the fact that they're centered, they're balanced. Hands are relaxed, angle of the oar handle is shifted, letting the oar handle swivel, letting it swivel in their hands as they work through the cycle. So you can make some progress with that using the erg handle, teaching the looseness, okay? Getting them to be relaxed. If you're out on the water and you're not getting that concept across when you're out on the water, or 7 of them in your 8 have it, 1 of them doesn't, pull the one in, set them down on the erg, ask them to sit at the catch on the rowing their side, ask them to sit at the finish rowing their side, make the point. Okay? Again, that's an illustration of how you can really use the erg to help with your teaching, help them with their rowing. In terms of the rowing stroke itself, yes, question?
Question of the angle.
Yeah?
So, I'm forward, and I'm leaning here. Now, do you want them, obviously, if you want change still to be in the middle, or is it going to scrape a little bit?
On the ergometer? I don't care, because I'm not interested. I mean, I'm not going to ask him to row sweep on the ergometer. I'm just trying. Just
for that, I mean, so you could still say, just twist the hand. No?
Sure, absolutely. These things are indestructible. Okay, you're not going to hurt the ergometer. So, but again, the point being, we're not trying to learn how to row the erg better. We're trying to learn how to use the erg as a tool to row better on the water. In the rowing stroke itself, I like to think everything begins before we think it does. Okay, so for me, the rowing stroke begins at the finish. Right? Why? Because I think the finish is the easiest position to teach. Right? Again, getting the person stable, centered on the seat, sitting up, not letting themselves slouch, right? Being in control of their body, being connected to the boat through their feet, right? Good, solid finish position, all right? You get somebody who pinches their shoulders, you can come up and ask them to lower their shoulders. Okay? Elbows, all kinds of talk about where the elbows are supposed to go. Okay? I'm not telling you where to put the elbows, but I'm showing you, you can get them where you want them to be. Right? You can help encourage the correct pattern of motion. You can help encourage the behavior that you most want. Right? I will say that you're probably going to have a stronger stroke if the elbows have come past the body rather than merely out to the side. Right? I've never seen anyone open a heavy door doing this. I've never seen anyone open a car door doing this. Right? I've never seen anyone in a tug-of-war contest that does this. We've got to, boom, bring it right through, bring it right through. And again, that's a behavior we can encourage on the ergometer. The other thing with the finish that'll work very hard to do is to maintain that contact. This is where we're going to control the boat. We're going to control the boat through our feet. Okay? They're very much like the pedals on the car. That's what determines. That has the biggest determining factor. The real influence on the car is what you're doing with your feet. And I think I like to say the same thing occurs in the boat. Okay, this might be your steering wheel, but this is really where things are happening. Is down here. Okay? So, can we row and maintain that contact? Okay? If there's no contact, okay, there's not much going to happen. Okay? So have them row. You're starting out with some younger athletes. You're starting out with some athletes newer to the sport. Don't let them use the straps. Have them put their feet on top of the straps. I refer to, we all get in the car, the first thing we do is we put our seatbelt on. Okay? We don't intend to need the seatbelt during that drive. Okay? I like to think of the straps on the erg the exact same way. Sure, you put your feet in the straps, but if the straps are the only thing that are keeping you from falling off the erg, it's unlikely that that's going to be an effective stroke. So have them put their feet on top of the straps, teach them to row that way. They're already predisposed to trying to stay balanced. Okay? You've taken away a crutch from them. Right? And then as they get better and better, you can work harder and harder and harder. You can roll full pressure with your feet on top of the straps. But first things first. First step first. Go ahead. One of the other things that I'm always wrestling with is a tendency on the part of athletes to have what I call a big finish. All right, this sort of huge back end. And in reality, all we're trying to do in the boat is to let go. To let go. The blade comes out of the water very, very easily. I like to give the Dreisengackers and the Croker family credit for having these oars be so well balanced that you can tap the blade out of the water very easily. Right? When the boat's moving faster, it's even easier to get the blade out of the water. But a lot of the students, a lot of us feel that sort of like, oh my God, I'm going to catch a crab if I don't work that blade out of the water. So one of the things we can do on the erg to sort of encourage some quietness there, to encourage some smaller motions, is to give them a sense, if you would, just sit at the finish. Good. And to just give them a sense of how little motion is necessary. So I'll stick this broomstick out here and just ask them to work the hands away. Just row arms only. So they don't feel like they need to push down. They don't feel like they need to make a big, big circle around the back end. Another way I'll do it with sort of the slow learners. Go right through here, just like, oh, I remember this one. Okay. There. There's enough room right there. He's not going to be able to do a big circle back here. He's not really going to be able to do much of anything. But the point being, that's all you need. You're just tapping down with your hands. You don't need to change your elbows. Your elbows don't need to look like a bird trying to fly through the air. All you need to do is give it a little bit of a tap down, and you can move right on out. So learning to separate, as we're leaving the water, learning to separate the motion of just down and away versus, cranking. It's going to improve the balance a great deal. It's going to allow you to hold on to the finish longer, take a longer stroke, a more effective stroke. And again, if you can establish good principles on the ergometer, you stand a better chance of getting those actions, those behaviors, once you get in the boat. The other one, of course, is to not let people do funny things at the finish. Okay? Show me something funny at the finish with your handle. Yeah, way up here. Okay? Elbows stop, hands continue. Huh? You never see that in the boat. Never. I hope not. So again, do not allow them to do things on the erg that you would not allow in the boat. If you don't like it in the boat, don't do it on the erg. The erg is habit forming. If you let them do this on the erg, it's not that they're going to do that exactly in the boat, but it's a sure thing they won't do what you want them to do in the boat. So just some things with the finish there. The next step, of course, is the recovery. The recovery is about two things. The recovery is about allowing the boat to move out from underneath us. Okay? The recovery is about allowing the boat to move out from underneath us. Passive. Extremely passive. Okay? Another way I like to is don't screw it up. Okay? You just did all this work. Ideally, you let go of the water without disturbing things. Now, don't screw things up. So the recovery becomes largely about trying to eliminate extraneous motion. It becomes about trying to let the boat go. Right? Move in a sequential, in a smooth way. Right? So there are a couple of things that we can do with that. One is, and I'm going to get back, remember I said the recovery is about two things. I'm talking about one of them right now. Think, if you will, about where the blades are when the athlete's at the finish. Okay? Now where's the blade when our arm's away? versus the hull. Where is the blade relative to the hull of the finish? Where is it arms away? And then where is the blade as we get farther and farther up the slide? Right? Well, initially the blade's quite close to the hull. Right? We go arms away, the blade moves farther away from the hull. Arms and body, the blade's almost perpendicular at that point. And then as we get closer and closer to the catch, the blade starts moving back closer and closer to the hull. Well, you're a high wire trapeze artist. Where do you want that blade for balance? You want it as far out as you can. You want it as far away from the shell as you can. So I would maintain, in order to not screw up the boat, in order to not mess up the boat that's now moving so well after our good drive, let's try to do the thing, let's try to confine our movement where we have to move our body to the point where the blade is farthest away from the hull. Because that's when the blade's most able to help us balance-wise. So long and short of it, what are we saying? Early preparation. If we're going to be moving our bodies, let's try to do that early in the recovery when that blade is moving away from the hull. Let's not attempt that at the top of the slide, all right, where, come all the way up the slide for me if you would, just so we don't want to come up the slide, get the blade close to the hull, and then move, right? Why? Because it's very likely to disturb the boat more because we don't have that same counterweight farther away from the boat as we did earlier in the recovery. Okay? So that's all part of the idea of not screwing things up. Okay? Early preparation, getting out of the bow early, letting the boat run out from underneath us also. You want to do a great exercise on the water. I know this is not relevant, I'm sorry, but have your kids sit there, have them rush out of the bow for a second. Where does the boat go? It goes forward, doesn't it? It goes towards the finish line. It goes exactly where you want it to go. Right? So if we can get them to move out of the bow together, you can pick up a little bit. So you can actually get a little forward motion there that's sort of free motion. You work hard for the motion you've created on the drive. Move out of the bow together, you get a little free motion. Okay? So we said the recovery is about two things, about not screwing up the good thing that you've done. You got the boat up and going. Second thing is, it's about preparing for the next drive. It's about getting your body in a position to do the next bout of work, to take the next drive. Okay? Now, if I'm going to pick something up off the floor that's light, I don't really have to do much of anything. I lean over, I pick it up. Right? If I have to pick something heavy up off the floor, right, I start to plant my feet. I start thinking about where my weight is. I start thinking about how I approach the object. I get myself in the best position to try to be able to use my muscles effectively, use my levers effectively. And that's exactly what we want to try to do with the recovery as well, is to treat it as a way of letting the boat move and to treat it as a way of preparing for the next cycle of work. Those are two things that, because it's all the recovery sequence, that you can work very extensively with on the ergometer. One of the easiest ways to do it is to find the kid that you like. I say, kid, maybe you're teaching masters, I don't know, but find the individual who you like what they're doing, and put them there as the example. They're the mirror. Put them, and put one kid on either side, and tell the kids on either side, shadow. Be that person's shadow. Right? Yes, I know you can finish the drive, essentially when that other person does. I know you can start the drive, essentially when that other person does. Because I see we're all rowing 24 strokes a minute or 20 strokes a minute. What I'm interested in, can you make the journey together? Can you travel together? Right? That's what's going to allow the boat to move best on the recovery. That's what's going to allow us to get best prepared for the drive. If we pick our model correctly. Okay? So again, another way of thinking it too, in terms of preparation, is what does the drive consist of? The drive consists of really creating pressure on the foot stretchers. Okay, if we're going to have pressure on the face of the blade to create pressure on the pin, we're going to have pressure on the foot stretchers. That's how we're going to, that's why we talk about pushing. Okay? Well, you can do that here. They should feel an increase in weight as they come forward, so that they are then in a position to drive effectively, to push effectively. Right? It's heavy. Right? It's heavy. You want them to feel that it's heavy. Now we know as things pick up, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. Right? But nonetheless, it's still a heavy object. How much does a shell weigh? How much does everybody in the shell weigh on top of that? Okay? What we often see is, how do people try to do it? They try to kick it along. Kick, 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 kick. Okay? Well, that's going to put a real momentary impulse into the system, right? But it's not going to give you the sustained pressure through the arc of the drive. If you come onto the foot stretchers with greater control, if you ease yourself onto the foot stretchers, you're then going to be much more likely to press through the foot stretchers for the full duration. You're going to be much less likely to try to jam. Another way of approaching it is just with the language that you use too. Okay, you're doing great, by the way. Push through the foot stretchers, not away from. Okay, push through the foot stretchers. Maintain the pressure. Okay, you have the boys that have played football. You block through the blocker. Okay, you don't go up and hit them once. Unless you're some monster and can knock the person over, you engage and you keep moving him away. All right? And it's that sustained contact, that sustained pressure that allows us to accelerate all the way through. So with the recovery, again, I don't want to bore you by, I think that there are a couple other things. A couple other things that we can do on the recovery. One is, I like to talk about the rectangle. Right? Our arms form two sides of the rectangle. The shoulder, the handle, form the other two sides of the rectangle. Okay? We want to get this. We want to be prepared when we get up there to do good work. We don't want to be in a situation where we're going to be limited because the arms are bent. And as we know, the muscles of the arms are weaker than those of the legs. So here on the ERG, you can really get people to think about stretching out. You can come up and correct them very, very easily. So we spend I'll spend a lot of time trying to get this concept of the rectangle, creating an early rectangle. The only other what else did I want to go with? Who does things at half slide? Okay, three-quarter slide? Okay, very good. Does anyone else think that the schools don't teach fractions any longer? Right? Okay, well, the beautiful thing on the ERG is you can clearly identify what you mean by half slide, what you mean by three-quarter slide, so that when you then get out on the water, everybody's together. If we haven't done this before we go out, I will lose 5 to 10 minutes. Johnny, up a little farther. Sam, back a little bit. Peter, move a little, because everybody's got a different concept in their head. If I take 1 minute on the ERG before we go out, oh, okay, that's what you mean. That's half slide. Oh, that's what you mean. That's three-quarter slide. So again, just using the ERG in that fashion as a way to make your time on the water more productive. And that's a clean break. As I said, everything in rowing, in my opinion, sort of begins before we think it does. So where do we start? We start at the finish. Right? Next step, the recovery. Recovery is preparation for the next drive. Recovery as allowing the boat to move out from underneath us. The next step then, obviously, is the blade going into the water. And even here, again, the language. The most common term for that is the catch. And I think that depending upon the nature of your crew, the catch can be a great word to use, or it might be a bit strong, a bit too aggressive of a word to use. I oftentimes like to just use the word the entry. Okay, we're just going to get, the entry. I tend to teach a softer entry than many others. Now, What's the relevance to that with the ergometer and what we can do with the erg? Well, the big thing is the sequence. The sequence. The key to getting the blade in the water correctly is the timing of the entry. Okay, where are we in the recovery when we get the blade in the water? Are we, in fact, still on the recovery, or have we already begun mistakenly the drive? So we know that once we get that blade secure in the water, we need to create pressure on the front of the handle. We need to create pressure on the foot stretchers. We know that we don't want to have that pressure until after the blade has entered the water. So on the ergometer, what we'll do is we'll talk a lot about making sure that they feel the weight coming forward, they feel themselves in control of that weight so that they're able to change directions like a skier going downhill. You don't want to come into the front stops like a skier out of control. You want to come in with the ability to change direction under control of your body. Okay? So we'll ask them to come forward, make sure that they feel it building on their foot stretchers, and feel the moment when the handle goes up. Make a conscious effort to lift the handle before driving the legs. Okay? Now, it actually used to be easier with the older ergs because the monitor arm could be pressed down to the point where it was parallel with the floor. And one of the things that worked very well if you have the old erg was you'd just have them come forward and you'd have them lift the handle and tap the monitor arm before you allowed them to drive. So come forward, handle up, boom, push back. Come forward, handle up, push back. Exactly what we're looking for in the boat, and a great way to reinforce the correct habit. Okay, it's a little bit harder here. You're not going to be able to tap the arm the same way, but you can still have them come up and actually ask them to raise the handle before you allow them to push back. Okay? So they can get that sequence. Blade has to go in before pressure comes on the foot stretcher. Blade has to go in before pressure comes on the foot stretcher. At the level most of us are coaching at, if you can get your athletes to put the blade in the water before they create pressure on their foot stretchers, you are going to be significantly faster than most everybody you race. Right? That's the one thing that is the biggest differential between, frankly, good rowing and poor rowing. Who can continue to take the time to put the blade in the water before they drive? You can teach that, or at least you can encourage that. You can lead it to water, doesn't mean they're going to drink, but you can encourage that on the ergometer by asking them to lift the handle before they drive. One of the nice side benefits of that is, as they do that, none of them are going to come forward and do this. None of them are going to have their hands make a huge, huge lift. It's going to be small, right? Which is what it needs to be in the boat. It doesn't need to be big in the boat. You can also make sure that it's a lift of the hands and not a lift of the shoulders, not a lift of the chest away from the knees. Everything else stays the same, hands go up, then I push. Everything stays the same, hands go up, then I push. It's a drill that we will do a great deal of during the winter time. We're going to begin a piece, going to begin some lower intensity rowing, 10 strokes with the handle lift. Now, am I going to ask somebody to sit on the erg and do a full pressure piece or do something hard and lift the handle? No, I'm not going to ask them to do that. Right? But again, I am going to remind them of it. I'm going to remind them of the importance of making sure that they put the blade in the water before they drive. And I'm going to reinforce it by taking the time to ask them to do it a few times on the ergometer. We might be, say we're going to do, Thursday we did 4 15-minute segments of lower intensity training. Okay, each of those 15-minute segments, first 10 strokes, pause, lift, pause, lift, pause, lift. Then go, all right, good, continue on. Okay? Just so they get the idea. Okay? Very good. What else? Good. Then working into the drive, again, you can follow along. There's some other illustrations there. The Jackson 5 drill. They have no idea what the Jackson 5 drill is. Okay, they don't know who. They have very strong opinions about Michael, but they don't know about the Jackson 5. We had a marvelous oarsman, Henry Newsom, a number of years ago. Rode a double with a keel, went to the Olympic Games 2000 and 2004. And one of the tricks that Charlie Butt came up with to help Henry with this idea of sequence was he took a tube of toothpaste, took the cap off the toothpaste, okay, secured the toothpaste under the balls of the feet, and said to Henry, look, I want you to come forward, and I want you to hold that tube in place. I don't want to see the tube slip down, but I want to see you come forward. I want to see you lift the handle before I see any toothpaste come out. I want to see you lift the handle before any toothpaste comes out of that tube. Now again, what is it? It's a gimmick. It's a gimmick. It's nothing more than that. But the light goes off. You know, the cartoon character, all of a sudden, same idea. And as a coach, that's oftentimes what we're looking for. How do you reach an athlete? How do you reach somebody? How do you take, you know, you're trying to take your words. You're trying to take your words and create a physical activity elsewhere. Right. I've always thought that's a much more difficult thing to do than to create an intellectual thought elsewhere. Because then you're just talking language. That's easy. What the professors do, that's easy. But you're trying to use words to create a physical activity. Okay? The last one that could do that was God in the Old Testament. Okay? Parting the Red Sea, burning the bush. Other than that, it doesn't happen too readily. So it's a really big challenge. But that was one. Eggshells is the other one. Imagine you're holding, you know, you've got an egg there, you're holding the egg. It's not until you lift the handle that you crush the eggs. Okay? Gimmicks, as I said. Just they're gimmicks, but if they connect, if it's a good demonstration, something you can do once here can save you a half hour out there. Or it may be that you never get it out there without coming up with some way to do it in here. But the drive, okay, sort of the end all and be all. I think the drive is probably the easiest thing to teach on the ergometer. One of the things that is not commonly thought of is to listen to the wheel. To get them to listen to the wheel, to hear the acceleration of the wheel. Is the wheel moving faster as the drive progresses? Right? The wheel should move faster. There should be more handle speed as you get closer and closer to the finish. And if you're in tune to it, you can hear that. It's a lot easier to hear that on some of the older ergs. Okay? Some of the gamuts, the Gieslings, those kinds of things. There's still old-timers that talk about sort of, you know, coming into our boathouse and their heart rate would jump 30 beats just as they started walking up the stairs because they could hear that sound. And they knew that, oh, that's hard work going on, you know, and I'm next in line. So, but you listen, and something we can all do ourselves, and just, are they in fact accelerating? Ask them to create the, you know, let them hear you do it. Ask them, see if they can't get themselves to do the same thing, to change the sound of the wheel through the drive because the wheel's moving faster. Okay? A lot of the demonstrating that we'll do, anytime I'm trying to teach an athlete, right, the first thing I'll do is I'll make it heavy. All right? It's much easier to learn things when they're heavy than when they're light. Heavy gives us resistance. Heavy makes it easier to feel. Right? The challenge in our sport, as you're well aware, obviously, is water's fluid. Right? It escapes easily. It's hard to get hold of. It's very difficult to engage it. Right? On the ergometer, bring the damper up, increase the drag factor, make it heavy. Right? They're not going to be able to do some things that they could do when the load is lighter. Teach them when it's heavy, and then as they get better, you can reduce the drag, right, and make it more comparable to what they're going to experience on the water. The same thing it's the same thing you already do when you have them row by 4s in the 8. You know, how come they can get it by 4s, but they can't get it all 8? Right? Well, 1, because it's more stable, but 2, because it's a heavier load. Right? Because it's easier for them to feel it. It's easier for them to know that they're connected to it. It's easier for them to be aware if they've lost it. Very, very difficult things for new rowers to identify if it's light. The other thing I do when I'm demonstrating is if I'm doing the demonstration, I make it as light as I can, okay? And that always makes me look good. So, now also on the drive, I like to talk about, Jeff, if you would just sit up at the catch for me at the top of the slide. I like to talk about the drive axis. Okay, the drive axis, sort of the drive vector. All right, we all have students that sort of lift up inappropriately. They're what I like to call rowing, overhill rowing. They row up to the summit and then they come down the backside of the mountain. All right, so I try to encourage them to think about creating force in one horizontal plane. And I think that this is also an easy way to sort of adjust so that you get the rigging on the erg right. And what do I mean by that? I mean that I think you want to have a straight line, a straight horizontal line between the handle, through the knees, right back to where the lad inserts into the back. So I want to see a line here from where the lat inserts into the back, through the kneecap, out to the handle. Right? So what's the one variable I've really got here? Well, it's the height of the feet. Right? So that's the thing that I'll most readily adjust. Now it might mean I need the person to sit up a little bit more, or perhaps if they're, depending on how they're built, I might need them to scoot forward on the seat a little bit. But for the most part, I'm going to adjust the height of the feet to try to get that. Is that perfect for everyone? No. Is it a starting place for everyone? I think it's a pretty good starting place. And I would say then, with reason, deviate from that. But if you want somewhere to start, one line, handle, knees, where the lat inserts in the back. And then encourage them to think of that's where you're generating the force. That's the vector you want all the way through the drive. Okay? A couple other things that we'll do. You've got the one who likes to lift up. Right? Just imagine you're rowing under the parallel bars at the gymnastics studio. Okay? Do not touch the parallel bars. They're electrified. It's simple stuff. The other thing I also find, again, it's a cheap joke, but they really do listen more when you carry a big stick. Okay? So we'll set this up, and you just have them row. Okay? Just have them row. I don't want your shoulders to touch the bar. Leave the shoulders down. Right? They'll get the idea pretty quickly. It's actually a pretty easy thing for them to figure out. What's another analogy? We'll say, I want you to row under the tunnel. I want you to row into that tunnel and not let your head hit the ceiling of the tunnel. Right? I want you to push into the tunnel. Little things like that you can experiment with on the ergometer. There are a couple of cheap tricks that you can do as well, okay? You've got somebody that's not using their legs enough, okay? Raise the back end of the erg. Put the back end of the erg 6 inches up. Put a couple of 45-pound plates underneath the back end. Force them to row uphill. Okay? They're going to use their legs more, all right? I know people that do this just for strength training, that's how they'll do some of their erging. But if you, again, from a teaching perspective, it's a good way to engage the legs. Get them using their legs more. Another way, again, hands-on teaching, push against my hand. You've got somebody who's not using their legs enough, push against my hand. Okay? What do you do with the one who's shoving their bum? Shoving their slide? Shooting their slide. Sorry. We've got all these British kids trying to use their language. Okay? So shooting the slide, what do? Push against my hand. Okay? Push against my hand. Teach to the opposite extreme. Okay? If you've got a problem, you've identified the problem, you want to correct the problem, ask them to perform the opposite problem. Right? It'll do two things for you. One, it'll make them aware of what they're doing. Because remember, what they're doing, they think is correct. They wouldn't be doing it if they didn't think it was correct. And two, they may not be able to replicate, they may not be able to make that second mistake, but they're going to move closer to where you want them to be. And really, that's the whole point of it. You don't care whether they can make a different mistake. You care in the attempt to make that different mistake, do they get closer to where you want them to be? And then you can say, that's better. That's better. Do you feel that? That is what we are looking for. So they then get reprogrammed. They then have an idea of, oh, okay, this is getting me praise. This is getting, I'm the dolphin. I'm getting the fish here. This is what they want. Okay, I can do that. Sometimes what it'll show to you too, though, is a person can't make changes to save their life. Well, and that person, and at some point you're just like, okay, this is what we are. This is what we've got. We'll make the best of it. But you want to encourage the athletes, look, make a change. If I'm asking you to do something, again, this is something you can do on the erg because it's safe. Much safer than being on the water. Right? Make a change. I'd rather see you make the wrong change. I'd rather see you make a change that is too extreme. Show me that you're making a change. Then we've got something to work with. If I don't see any change, we have a problem. Right? And again, the athletes are always going to think they're making a change. Okay? And that's one reason why I'll never, ever, ever use the word little. Okay? I want you to use your back a little more. Nonsense. I want you to stop using your legs. That's going to elicit a response. Because you tell them, I want you to use your back a little bit more, they're going to come off the water and say, like, Coach, I was using my back a little bit more. Why'd you keep telling me to use it a little bit more? How come you kept repeating yourself? You kept telling me to use it a little bit more. You kept telling me to use it a little bit more. Well, they think they've done that. We're, of course, looking at it. Nothing's different. Nothing has changed. Huh? I want you to use your back so that your mother complains to me after the race that you're going to hurt your back. I want it to be obvious to the spectator on shore. That kind of thing. Get them the extreme. Teach to the extreme, you might get where you want to be. Small steps, asking them to make small changes, you won't see much of a change. And again, something you can do on the ergometer. Good. Another couple other simple drive tools, and actually this is one that one of the other coaches at Harvard, Wayne Berger, used to do a lot with, is just single leg rowing. Just put one leg on the floor and row. They're going to push. They're going to push. You're going to get them pushing. And again, that's one of the greatest things that you can teach. Yeah, you can mix up the legs, that kind of thing. You've got somebody who's grabbing on the drive. You've got somebody, early arm bender. Anybody ever seen that before? Yeah. Okay. Well, one hand. Row with one arm. Put your hand right in the middle. Yeah. Yeah, just row with one arm. Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable, but you know what? They're not going to do this. Row with one arm. Okay, lower the split. Lower the split again. All of a sudden, they're hanging off the oar handle. Right, excellent. Why don't you do the same thing now, both arms? Have your both arms feel exactly the way that one arm felt. Two-finger rowing. Just put two fingers over on the front on the drive. They can't grab. You don't have the ability. I call this the hook 'em horns drill. Okay, just hook 'em, boom, or some good show from the 80s or whatever. But okay, so you hook the first two fingers over, bingo, and have them drive. They're not going to grab. They don't feel secure enough to grab. Two fingers. All right, good. Let's see, can you get the same feel now with all four fingers on the front of the handle? Can you get the same feel with both hands, with the hands over on the front? Lots of ways, again, lots of ways to just sort of spice it up. Cross the hands, okay? Yep, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's a great way to relax the shoulders. You come up, right? You can't lift your shoulders. It just doesn't work, does it? It doesn't work. Right? Yeah, so that's what I want your shoulders to feel like at the top of the slide. Okay, again, it's a gimmick, it's a drill. What's a drill? an exaggeration. The beauty of the erg, you can exaggerate safely. You can take things to an extreme that will ideally induce learning in a way that taking them to the extreme on the water perhaps could not be possible, or certainly would not be as readily possible. Bingo. Okay, so that's sort of the rowing stroke there. The other major element, obviously, and you know, one of the most interesting things about rowing, one of the most difficult things to convey, is a sense of rhythm. Right? A sense of rhythm. And in the rowing stroke, rhythm is a function of ratio. Right? It's musical. Right? Anybody that's ever played an instrument, it's not just about the noise your instrument makes, it's about the periods when there's silence. That's what makes music. Right? Same thing with rowing. Right? Ratio. There's rest time, there's work time. How can you do that on the erg? Very simple. Right? Hold a steady split. Right? Hold that split. Right? Now I want you to drop the rate 4 beats and hold the same split. Ah, feel that time on the recovery. Yeah, good. Now we're rowing with some ratio. Right? Now we're rowing with some ratio. That's a, you know, some other ways we like to talk about it. Have the handle move faster than the seat. Okay? Have the handle move faster than the seat. As you begin the recovery, okay? As you drive. Okay? Have the handle. Why? Because the handle has to travel farther than the seat does. If the handle and seat are going the same speed all the way through, then you're in trouble. The handle has to move faster. Okay? You can point that out on the erg much more, I think, much more easily. Couple things, you know, and you get this with sort of, you know, big strong guys, macho guys, what have you. Okay, they want to row hard. Okay? The erg moves. Done. That's it. It's over. Right? That's not rowing. Right? That may be CrossFit. Okay? That may be something else, but it's not rowing. So if you're doing something where the erg moves, you're done. Start over. Okay? The chain. Okay? The chain looking like a sine wave. Okay? That's not rowing. Okay? That's not rowing. That's not going to be conducive in the boat. So if we see that, boom, shut it down, start over again. Because all you're doing is flying around out of control, jerking the handle. Okay? And you can't jerk a boat down a rowing course. You can't jerk a boat anywhere. Okay? So that's sort of the stroke itself. Then, you know, moving on from that, you can get into some good racing concepts, some things you can teach. You know, the obviously the training benefits of the ergometer. But the large and the small of it, it really boils down to just the ability to introduce a new topic using the erg in a much more time-efficient manner than trying to introduce it on the water. Okay? And two, the erg is providing a safer venue for someone to make a change. That they can do things, they will be willing to do things, they'll be willing to change their behavior on the ergometer more readily than they would in a boat, on the river, surrounded by their peers, in what could be a dangerous environment if they're not careful. So you can, again, not going to insult your intelligence, you can read as well as I can. Jeff can read better than I can, he's an English teacher. The only other, yes, you know, the other thing the erg can do, for all that we talk about it as a training tool, it's a competition tool. It's a competition tool. You can use it to help them expand their concept of what their best effort is. Forget about making them fitter, forget about making them stronger. You can use it to expand their concept of what their best effort is. And that is the key to racing. That's the one variable you've got the most control over on race day, is your effort. And the erg, again, can allow them to see an increase in effort. It can allow them to be rewarded for the behavior that you're trying to encourage in them as a racer. Good. And then we have a couple cautions, some of which I've already mentioned. But again, the big ones would be, you know, just like the equipment in your boathouse, the erg's no different. One size does not fit all. You cannot expect a typical 13-year-old middle school girl to look the same, do the same on the ergometer as a typical college male. Nor could you expect the two of them to look the same as a master's rower who may not have some of the same gifts of youth any longer. So one size does not fit all. And you have to adjust your eye, you have to adjust your expectations, you have to look for ways around that. Because right now, they're not making any changes. It would be great if they sold handles that had different diameters. It would be great if they sold ergs that had a different range of drags available. It would be great if they sold ergs that had longer flywheels, longer slides. It'd be great if they sold ergs that had a greater range of height adjustment to the feet. But this is what we got, and it's darn good, so we can work with it. Good. Last thing I do want to say is and I've written it here, never use the erg as punishment. I'm a firm believer. I still see coaches like, oh, you're late for practice. You're going to have to do an extra 6K on the erg. Or, you guys misbehave. You're going to have to do this on the ergometer or whatnot. There's reasons why people don't like the erg. And it's because we've sort of created this aura about it, that it's the medieval dungeon device. And it's like, no, the erg is your friend. Okay, the erg is here to help you get better. So anything anything that we do that associates the erg with punishment or with negativity or whatnot, well, of course, that's the message they're going to get. They're not going to want to be on the erg. But if we're positive about it, if we make it evident to them how valuable it is and how good it is and what we can do with it, then you're going to find that they're more comfortable and more willing to engage in it. So that's just one. If you're having behavioral issues, find other ways to deal with them. Having them erg longer is not the solution. All right. Questions, criticisms, comments. What? Then H, oh yes, okay. All right, a lot of people like the sliders, the dynamic ergs as well. There's Row Perfect, there's the Ortec, the Concept 2 is coming out with one. The whole idea behind the sliders is to simulate what it is on the water that you're doing. On the water, our bodies are largely stationary, and it is the boat that moves out from underneath us. On a stationary erg like this, the erg does not move. It's the body that moves. All right, so it comes forward, there's a great deal of force, change of direction, boom, a sudden stoppage of that force. Okay, where's that energy getting absorbed? In your back. Right? Bingo. Change of direction to come forward. Very different from in the boat. So the idea behind the sliders, as I said, was to make it more like being on the water, where it's the equipment that would be doing the movement. Okay? Now, one of the challenges, though, I've found, others have found before me, with dynamic ergs, the sliders, is that we really don't use the back the same way. In that the back tends to move through a much, much smaller arc. It tends to be largely static, and you get a real good leg drive, you get a real good draw through. And one of the concerns that some of us have is that it's not teaching you to use the leverage of your body, to really pry with your body as thoroughly as is beneficial on the water, particularly beneficial when you're working into a greater resistance, if you're in a slower boat, a heavier boat, a headwind, that sort of thing. So, if you're going to use the sliders, great, but I would just say be aware of that. Because when you transition back out onto the water, you may not have developed that strength. You may not have encouraged the use of those muscles the way you're going to want them to use them in the boat. Mm-hmm. Yes, on a static erg, you're definitely, if you would, row arms and body. Yeah. On the static erg, you can very easily encourage use of the body as leverage. You can very easily encourage the, the prying, the leveraging that you can do with a trunk. Yeah. Yep, exactly. Exactly. That's an excellent drill, partial slide to develop that strength, develop that capacity, develop that sense. And again, the slower the boat, the more valuable that, excuse me, yeah, the slower the boat, the more valuable that is. Mm-hmm. Yes. Ah, yes, the foam pad. Very good. Okay, Jeff's done a marvelous job. Let's get another volunteer, though, real quickly. Thank you, Jeff. Check's in the mail, buddy. I need another volunteer. Anybody? Come on up, come on up, come on up. Okay? Great. All right. So this is I have found this to be an extremely valuable teaching tool. Okay? Who has ever told an athlete to get suspension? Okay? Who's ever told an athlete to get connected? Okay? Excellent. Okay. Who thinks that athlete really knows what you're talking about? Okay? So, this is our little tool, all right? We've all done that drill where you have them come up in the boat, put the blade in the water, and okay, I want to see you stand up on the foot stretchers and get off your seat. Okay? It's a great drill. It's a great drill. Okay? It takes a really long time to work through an 8. And you're more than likely doing it in 8. It takes a long time to give everyone some exposure to that, a couple reps of that. All right? Take this foam, and if you would, put it under your rear end. Okay? We're doing the exact same thing. Exact same thing. Come on up. Okay, going to make it heavy. It's easier to feel when it's heavy. Okay? And I want you to just row and have the foam expand as you row. Yeah. Huh? So you can teach the same behavior, and yet they don't have to stop between strokes. Right? Have the foam expand. Right? Yeah. And you can just, again, it just saves time. Same concept. Right? Same concept. Hey, using your legs pretty strongly right now. You can see him holding on with his back here. Okay? So, and then you can fiddle with it. But the idea behind the foam is to allow you to teach suspension. If the foam expands, they're suspended. If the foam expands, they're connected. Right? Pressure's on the foot stretchers, pressure's on the front of the handle because it's not on their rear end. Good, thank you. Beautiful. And again, it just allows you to do it much, much more quickly. That's all. Okay? It all began, remember, it all began with the Model Bs. Sticking the screwdriver in. Yeah. To say with the old ergs, you get them to hold the handle. I mean, you can do the same thing now if you just hold the handle while they suspend themselves. Good. Yeah, exactly. You come get them right up off the rear end so they can feel. 9 times out of 10, all you're doing is you're introducing the concept of holding on with your body. That it's not enough to drive the legs. You have to have something for those legs to be working against in order for them to contribute to the speed of the boat. Okay? Any idiot can push his knees down. And if I hear my coxswain say, "Get your knees down," no. I don't care if they get their knees down. Right? Move the oar handle. Right? Move the oar handle. That's what's going to move the boat. Right? Getting your knees down and being connected, that's going to move the boat. But how many coxswains are going to say, "Okay, get your knees down while you're being connected"? Right? I haven't heard that before. Okay? Right. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Just have a quick question.
Yeah, Freddy. Fast Freddy. Yeah, so so the way the Gladiator works is you do that, okay? And then I would do the same with this way. So she would get to see my split. It's upside down, but believe me, they know, okay? And I would be looking at her split.
So
you pair up 2 people. I don't know what my split is.
It doesn't have to be upside down.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Wow. Wow. Excellent.
So do you want pair up 2 even, or maybe you could just say you're supposed to be 10 seconds lower than?
You could do that. It's just, again, it's under the heading of teaching them to compete, right? So they can see your split. They cannot see their own. It all comes back to the idea, how often are you asked what's a good score? What's a good time? Okay, what am I expect? What they're asking is, what am I expected to do? Well, the real answer to that, the only answer to that is, you're expected to do your best. That's all. And right now, I don't know enough about you to be able to assign a split or a total time or total meters or what have you. Maybe after a year of working together, you having more experience, yeah, then as I say, then we're going to play for par, okay? But initially, we're going for the hole-in-one every time. Okay? And then as they get more into the sport, as they get more experience and whatnot, as I said, then we start playing for par. Huh?
Can I throw in a comment about?
Yeah.
This is a bit long, so if I could get the microphone for the.
Happy to hand off the microphone.
I'm from the University of Minnesota, and like your gladiator thing, every year, one weekend, we do what we call the Minnesota Henley, similar to the Royal Henley in England, where everyone gets a split time that's 3 to 5 seconds faster than their 2K split, and then you have a bracket, everyone pairs up with the guy next to you, and you need to hold your split. As soon as you don't hold it for 2 consecutive strokes, you're done, and whoever has the most meters in that pair advances to the next stage of the bracket. And you go through the 5, 6 stages, and it's that really idea of competition, and you have the overall winner plus the winner who has the most meters, because you might be screwed and face 2 guys that get 1,000 meters and get sent to the loser bracket, but still get a lot of meters overall. And it's just, like you said, another idea of competition on the erg.
I like that. I like that a lot. Again, sharing ideas, I'm going to throw another one out because it's that time of year. We're not going to be rowing on the Charles anytime soon. This guy, Todd Jesdale, used to do this thing called Monsters. And I love this, okay? So 10 minutes at your low intensity pace, okay? Call it your steady state, call it your 2/3, call it your UT, whatever you call it in your boathouse, your category 6 if you're Canadian, I think category 5 if you're Canadian, because none of us are doing category 6, we don't have time. But 10 minutes, okay? Groove it in, groove it in, groove it in, whatever it happens to be. Let's say your split is 2 minutes. Okay? You spend 10 minutes at 2 minutes. So you've built up a 2-minute average for 10 minutes. Okay? The monster is let out of his cage. It's always a he, isn't it, when it's a monster? The monster is let out of his cage. Okay? You have to stay 5 seconds ahead of the monster. Okay? If you want to go shorter, 10 seconds ahead of the monster. We'll go 10 seconds to keep it short. So you have to hold 150s. Right? Well, the longer you hold 150s, what happens to your average? All of a sudden your average then becomes 159. Oh, you got to go to 149. Hold 149. All of a sudden the monster's now going 158. You got to go to 148. Right? It's a lot of fun if they embrace it. 2, it teaches a really valuable lesson about pacing. Because if you have to stay 10 seconds ahead of the monster, and you're 12 seconds ahead of the monster, pardon me, you're screwing yourself because that average is dropping faster. So you're working harder and you're making it more difficult for yourself on top of that. So it's a great pacing lesson. It's a great way, as is your drill, of getting people of different abilities to be able to compete with one another. It's handicapped. Okay, my split might be 2 minutes that I start with. Jeff's might be 155 that he starts with. Who can avoid the monster for the longest? Okay, so, no, you assign the opening split. Yeah. I haven't done it in a while, but I want to say that about 20. I think when we went 10 seconds under, it'd be about 20 minutes total. I think. It's been a long time since I've done it. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, exactly. Exactly.
Let's say 2 or 3 consecutive strokes, then you're out.
The monster's eating you. You're done.
I mean, you do it as soon as the split, or you do it like 2
I think last time I did it, I said, if you miss 3 consecutive strokes, you're done. Yeah. Again, think about what are you trying to do? You're trying to encourage good effort, okay? And as you know, even if you're a great pacer, you know, you get one stroke that's too high, you don't want them to stop. You want them to keep going. You want them to continue training. You want them to continue to get the benefit out of it. So you set it up in a way that they have to really, really work hard. You know, they can't just roll over and die, ideally. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been fun.